was several years ago that I got the idea that you need to meet Michael Anschel. But there's a very specific reason why he's the speaker today, and we're going to get to there, and it has something to do with the knickers. I wrote about him on Tuesday. When I asked him to provide me with some ideas of what he does outside of his work, so you know now that he is one of the world's experts on residential green building. Very outspoken, very creative, and he believes it's crazy for us to rebuild buildings in ways that aren't environmentally safe and sound and healthy for our planet. But when I asked him what's the other things he does outside of work, my inbox got flooded with pictures and all these crazy things that I probably would never ever consider doing. I think this guy is crazy. I'm absolutely delighted to introduce you to, probably a better word would be an adventurer, but please welcome the crazy Michael Anschel.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
That's an introduction, isn't it? All right. Well, I had a little introduction I was going to start you with. I still will start there, which is to say that I have 20 minutes, I've been told. And when I was 18, I had 2 months with which to travel across China and India, and it took me 3 years to get back. So I'd say get comfortable. So I did the 7F's wheel, which is not how I was going to start my talk, but for those of you who can see my wheel, fitness, I'm down. I didn't get to ski much the last couple years. I'm up a little bit. I've got a newborn. For those of you who've done the kids thing, man, right? That's a lifestyle change, right? But my fun, I put at a 12. My future's around a 15. And that's, I think that's, I brought it up because I think that that's probably a good way to start, that my perspective on life and how I've approached things has probably not always been within the confines of the construct which I was handed. I like to redefine things. I like to go out and explore things. I like to question things. I like to make things better. And which is kind of appropriate that I then got into the remodeling industry and the construction industry and the design industry, because remodelers by nature like to tear things down and make them better, right? So it's kind of interesting when your work actually reflects your value system and your belief system, where everything you do is about being willing to tear it down, right? That's always the hardest part, I think. And then having a vision for what should be there and building it up, and then being willing to go back later and maybe tear part of it out and change it and make it better, and continually do that and continually be in a process of improvement. But that's a lot of message, isn't that? That's like already into platitudes. We don't need that. So let me start. I think I'll start at somewhere near the beginning. How's that sound? Okay? Some of you want to hear about adventure travel, right? Some of you want to hear about green building? None of you want to hear about professional development and leadership, do you? There's a lot of really, really awesome people here. You guys know a lot about being leaders, which is pretty exciting. And it's humbling to be up here with you guys. So thank you for that in advance. So let's see. When I was 5 years old, let's start there. When I was 5 years old, my parents told me that I was going to be playing a musical instrument and that I could choose that instrument. That's cool, right? For a 5-year-old. It's a 20-year commitment that I'm making to this instrument at the age of 5. I have no idea what that really means, right? Concept of time is completely skewed. And I have a memory, one of the few memories from that age, of sitting in the first couple rows of a concert hall, of kind of small, relatively pedestrian concert hall, and I can't even remember which one it is. I'm sure my father, who's sitting over there, remembers. And I saw this cellist play. And he didn't just play the cello, he danced with the cello while he was playing it. Now, I'm 5. I don't know anything about classical music, and I got so excited about this. According to my parents, I turned to them and said, I want to do that, what that guy's doing. Now, technically, he was playing the cello, and it's Rostropovich, for those of you who are classical music fans. And he's famous for being very, very, very passionate about his music while he plays, and getting off of his seat sometimes while he plays. He moves off his seat. He gets so into the music. But I suspect that what I was probably responding to was his energy and his enthusiasm and his desire to reinterpret and live this music that he was playing in a way that was completely passionate and all-consuming and completely committed. And if I was to go back then and look at all the other things I've done, I think that's how I approach things. And if that's why I'm successful, then awesome. Everyone's got a different way of being successful. Mine tends to be to throw myself into something and make the most of it every single time. I have been on the speaking circuit for a number of years and went to all these conferences, and I found myself in this conference waiting for my turn to go up to give my presentation, and I was sitting there and I was kind of bored listening to some guy drone on about chemical composition of concrete and pozzolan, which is actually really exciting stuff. Pozzolans are cool. They're really cool. Google pozzolan technology when you get home. And I found myself thinking, what the hell is wrong with you? Why are you sitting here thinking that you're bored? No, you don't get that. There is nothing, at no point in time should I ever be sitting here saying, this is pointless, this is stupid, this is a waste of time. Because at that moment, it's all me, right? I'm choosing to take nothing from the moment, right? What I decided to do then was to learn from this terrible speaker what not to do when speaking myself, right? So you guys are like taking notes, like don't do that and don't do that, right? When I was, oh boy, how old was I? Probably 14 or so, I had the opportunity to go to France. That was cool. I was playing cello with the McPhail Chamber Group. We got to go to France. We got to explore the countryside of Lyon. And it was my first experience with another culture. And people wearing sweatpants and not showering as much as we did back in the States. It's not like a stereotype. It's a thing. But it was like, that's not weird if you're there. When I was 16, I developed a program for the Guthrie Theater, which I ran for a couple of years before I left the States, where we took kids who were in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, and we brought them into the Guthrie and got them familiar with Shakespeare. My father's a Shakespeare professor. When I was a child, we didn't get to watch TV. We didn't get to watch Dukes of Hazzard. We didn't get to watch Scooby-Doo. We didn't get Saturday morning cartoons. We ate tofu and watched little PBS and BBC productions of Shakespeare. The advantage, and I don't know if this was intentional, but the advantage was, as a kid, you absorb it, right? All that language comes in, and it makes sense. It's easy, right? And so when I got to junior high and high school, I didn't find that literature to be challenging. The language wasn't hard. It made sense. Could enjoy it. And when I was at the Guthrie, they had a policy of not letting kids under the age of 12 in to see a Shakespeare production. And I thought that was ridiculous. So I proposed to Garland Wright that we develop a program, bring kids in, teach them how to understand Shakespeare, give them season tickets, and let them go to the plays. And they loved it, and it was awesome. And then I left the country. And I went to China, which was supposed to be a short trip, and ended up being a long trip. And it was fun, and I explored it. And I went there with a lot of ideas, a lot of self-righteous, very firm beliefs in how the world should be, because I was 18 years old, right? And I wanted socialism, and I wanted equality, and I reject this, and I reject that, and right? A lot of judging. And I went there with this in expectation of what China was going to be like, and it was something entirely different. It was cell phones, and Mercedes, and BMWs, and well-fed people, and where was the tyranny? It was missing. The other thing, though, that was missing was my ability to really understand what was going on. After a year of being there, it's not true, 6 months of being there, I had explored much of the country. I'd had lots of very, very superficial conversations with lots of people. And I met this group of French students who spoke Chinese. And man, they were going deep to a whole nother level. And I thought, well, I got to do that. So I decided not to come back to the States and become a marine botanist and genetically modified food crops to grow in brackish environments, which is what I wanted to do. That sounds like fun, right? I still kind of want to go back and do that. So I enrolled in university. I learned Chinese. I got a job working for the Beijing Review. I got a paper. I got a job working for Beijing TV. I hosted a TV show. I taught at the People's University. Then I got a job working for the Japanese Embassy. And then I went to Japan. That was 2.5 years. I met my first wife, learned a little Japanese, came back to the States, and I fell into this remodeling industry completely by accident. I was trying to finish my degree. I was working at the co-op. And you know what? For 20 bucks an hour cash, I could work for my buddy who was a remodeler, who was terrible at business. And great guy, great musician, very passionate about life, horrible business person, right? And I decided I was going to, I don't know, do that. None of this was very intentional other than when I decide to do something, I decide to do it. I decide to explore it, and I decide to play with it. But in each of these situations, I wasn't coming to it with some kind of a preconceived notion about how to do it. And because of that, I believe, it allowed me to invent my own way of doing it, pulling from the best resources I could. So when I decided to get in construction, I went to the library, and I checked out a lot of books on how to build stuff. The very first edition I built with a friend of mine, which we probably should not have been building. We cut open the side of somebody's Tudor house, and we looked at it like, oh man, we just cut open the side of somebody's house. I really hope we know what we're doing. We framed this edition up, and the building inspector came out, and we were like, oh man, we had our Journal of Light Construction books sitting out on the ground because we were looking at how to cut rafter tails. And the building inspector came out, and he looked at the work, and he looked down at the ground, and he's like, this is great. I'm so glad to see that you guys are reading that book and doing great work. He said, everybody comes out here with this attitude of, well, my dad did, or I've been doing this since da-da-da. It's a fight the whole way. He's like, this is the best book there is on how to frame houses. And you're reading it. This is awesome. And he became one of our closest friends and changed our perspective on building inspectors. Building inspectors are your friends. So, hey, next time we want to build something or we want to push the envelope or we run into something funky, let's call up the building inspector and ask, what do they think? Suddenly you've got an ally. When we wanted to design a new space, we brought in all of our trades and we'd say, okay guys, we want to put an addition here, we want to move this bathroom here. What's the best way to lay out the plumbing? What's the best way to lay out the electrical? And where should we put things? What would be easiest for you? What would make the most sense? And the plumbers and the electricians were like, nobody ever asks us our opinion on this. We would do it like this. Everybody does it like this, and it's stupid and never works really well, but because this is how it should be done. All right, well then let's make that our standard. This is how we'll do it. Now this is known as collaborative design process or integrated design, right? It's got really cool titles that have been built around it. But back then it just seemed like that's the smartest way to do it because I'm not a plumber and I'm not an electrician and I don't know what I'm doing. A few years ago, many years ago now, I keep saying a few, does everybody feel like a few years ago was like 1985? So quite a few years ago, I got into skiing again. And when I was a kid, I went skiing, and I did ski club in junior high, and I'm pretty sure we snuck some alcohol out there, and it's ski club, right? And we did, and it was Afton Alps, so does it really matter, right? So I wanted to get back into skiing, and a buddy of mine, I was big into winter camping at the time. I was doing these expedition things out into the mountains of Wyoming and hiking up, 10, 12,000 peaks in the middle of winter and camping on it. It was fun, right? And you guys are like, what? So my buddy had this idea that we were going to tackle this peak called Disappointment Peak. And Disappointment Peak, if you've been to the Tetons, is the peak in front of Grand Teton that looks like you should be able to go right up it. But when you get to Disappointment Peak, there's a 2,000-foot drop straight down, and then it goes straight back up the other side, and there's about, 1,000 feet between. So you can't, you're disappointed, right? Hence the name Disappointment Peak. So we went out, we built this contraption with skis and plywood that was going to be our sled. It didn't work at all. We hauled it out there, and we hiked up this little mountain, and we decided to ski. We're going to see what it's like. I'd never been backcountry skiing before. Now I know that I should not have been backcountry skiing. Skied down this thing. It was pretty cool. And made it all the way down. I only fell like 3 times. And I was like, all right, cool, this is awesome. And at the very bottom, my left ski, right when it was flat, right when it was really easy, right? Like my buddy's standing right there, and I'm right there, and I'm just coasting in. And I'm not focused anymore. And I'm kind of like, hey, I did it, woo! And my left ski went that way, and my left knee went, and now I am a 2-day haul out in the middle of the backcountry of Wyoming with a ripped out MCL, and by that evening my knee looked like a basketball. That was miserable. But you know what? My friends decided to climb Disappointment Peak. I built the coolest kitchenette area, seating, tables in the snow. They came back and it was like I had this labyrinth of cooking area, reading area. I wasn't going to just sit in a tent. That'd be boring, right? I ended up becoming a pretty good skier, and now I love going in the backcountry. But what I've learned, and my friend Dr. Nelson over there, he and I run something called winter camp. We take leaders out into the mountains once a year. We take them up to 10,000, 13,000 feet, and we beat them up. And we make them explore their values and everything. But skiing is actually an incredible metaphor, I've found, for all of this. Whether it's your business, whether it's your family, whether it's your passions, your hobbies. In skiing, you have to point your skis down the hill. You got to go somewhere. You have to lean forward. Those of you who ski, you know exactly what I'm saying, right? Your instinct is to lean back. You're pointing down a hill, right? Your brain's like, no. No. Let's go this way, right? Nope, let's go that way. Let's lean into it. When you lean into it, you get all of the control. You cannot ski half-assed. If you are hesitant, if you aren't on it, you will fall, you will get hurt. It's the moment when we relax. It's the moment when we coast. It's the moment when we're like, I know this, autopilot, that it falls apart. And if you approach everything with this kind of intensity, and I like to use the word exuberance because I think it's a much more fun word, and you say, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go in and I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it 100%. And I might fail miserably, but that's fine, because then I did it completely. And along with failure comes opportunity and growth. We were talking about this yesterday. Problems, I think entrepreneurs don't see problems, do they? A problem is an opportunity. A problem is something to fix, something to change, something to deal with. It's something to do. I am a terrible manager. I suck at management. I do not like to just manage and maintain. I'm terrible at it. I like to build things and create things. In my business, I have removed myself from every aspect of management, so I'm just in the push. Let's push over here, let's push over there, let's push over here, because that's what I like to do. Along with failure comes fear, and I think that's what I want to talk about last, because I have the time. So, fear is something that some people use as a motivator, but I don't think is a good motivator. I think it's a terrible motivator. I think that fear is something that drives people for the wrong reasons. It's the thing that causes us to hesitate. It's the thing that causes us not to speak honestly, not to be completely honest with ourselves, with our family, with our business associates, with our goals. I think it's the thing that limits us. And generally speaking, not always, but I feel that fear has that ability, that power to control us because we refuse to address it. I'm a big believer in naming things and identifying them. And I believe that when you do that, when you name it, then you know it. And when you know it, you can deal with it. You can manage it. So I like to say that fear is always right here. It's always right next to me. That fear of death in some of my adventures, right? Paddle down the Yukon River for 1,000 miles unsupported. Good chance of death, right? I know that. I know what the dangers are. I know what the risks are. And I'm going to come to grips with it. And then I'm going to manage that. And I will acknowledge that it's there. And in the process, it loses its power to impact my decision-making process. If you've ever encountered fear firsthand, which I have done, it's completely crippling. It tears you apart. You cannot move. You can't think. You make terrible decisions. That's when you die. The one time that I've come that close, that face-to-face with fear, was rock climbing. It was terrifying. I don't do it anymore. Not really. It was completely destructive. And everything else I've done since then, racing tuk-tuk across India, going down the Yukon, walking across Portugal and Spain, has been with that understanding of what it is and the need to address it first. Same thing with business. Same thing with having 3 kids. It's scary. But if we know it and we name it, then I think we can manage it. So I like to think of fear as a positive thing. It's a happy thing. And with that, I think I'll close and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Fear is not one of the 7 F's.
Nope, it's number 8. Well, Michael and I share something in the fact that we think labels and words are really important, and he gave us a new one today. That's exuberance. I like that one. I see it all over the place. I see it all over this room. So what I'd love you to do now is to have your 10-minute roundtable conversation about, what part of your life right now would you describe as exuberant? Where's the exuberance coming from you? That's the most powerful part of you. Ready, set, go. I love doing the interview part of our conversation. I'm just going to start. I feel like we need to probe into a couple things, a little bit into your business. But I wrote about this idea of you being crazy. So let me just ask you, what's the craziest thing, looking back on it? What's the craziest thing you think you've done?
I think craziest thing I've done. Honestly, going to China at the age of 18 without a plan, a real plan, without language, and with $1,000, $1,400, I think is what I'd saved. That was pretty crazy. That was pretty stupid. Yielded really great results, but pretty crazy. The second would probably be kids. Kids and relationships. I do everything else really well, and I do kids pretty well, but kids, relationships on top of everything else, that's the craziest thing. So tell us a little bit about this family that you're creating here. At least one of your kids is internationally adopted. What have you learned about yourself and about yourself as a leader, but also as a human being, as a man, through that process? These are deep questions. 20 minutes, right?
Yeah.
I think, kids are cool, right? Kids teach you a lot about yourself and about the world and their observations and the ways they see things. They are always renaming things in plain terms that are insightful. And all 3 kids, so Rigo, who is 10, is adopted from Nicaragua. My ex and I adopted him when he was 6. And he is just an enthusiastic, mischievous, athletic bundle of joy. Loves to snowboard, loves the winter, and hates to sweat and hates the summer. He's from Nicaragua. Henry, who is our 6-year-old, who is brilliant. He's ASD, but he is so sweet.
ASD.
Sorry, he's on the autism spectrum. But is the sweetest little kid. He loves to play. He loves to ask questions. He's recently discovered math, which he thinks is so cool. And we are peppered with, hey, Dad, 7 plus 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 7 plus... Yes. The other day was like 1 trillion plus 18 trillion plus 200 is 19 trillion 200. I was like, that's pretty good for 6. And then Samuel, who is 1 and a bit. I refuse to do the months thing. He's 1 and a bit. And is learning he's got about 8 or 9 words under his belt and is mobile and puts things back in their place when he's done using them, and I'm so happy about that.
You got him from Mars, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so let's talk a little bit about your work. The first question I'm going to ask is something that I ask nearly every speaker, and that we know you're in the remodeling business. We're going to talk about that in a second. But where is your faith alive in your work?
That's a really good question. When I was 18 or 19, I would have said it isn't, and today I would say it's very, very, very high. We're Jewish, and the values that drive me, the way of looking at the world, the process of change, of continually reflecting and changing, that process of renewal, that willingness to wrestle. You know, we were talking about this, but you know, wrestling with God, and that notion of just you don't accept things, you challenge them, you question them, and that probably is most alive in our culture, and the way that our entire staff approaches everything we do, which is to ask questions, to look at things differently, and not just accept something in blind faith, but to be active in that process of, I'm doing this for this reason, this is why I believe it, and if someone presents me with a reason why that's not a good idea, that's fine, we'll go do it this way then. And that willingness to accept, to change, and not be dogmatic about our beliefs. So we are constantly reinventing ourselves and who we are and what we are. And I think that adapting, which is the way that most species survive, right? That's over time. The species that live, the 3% of all species that have survived from one age to the next, they have a common trait, which is the ability to adapt. And businesses that can adapt, people that can adapt, do well. So.
Well, you mentioned some cool process about concrete.
Pozzolans.
Pozzolans. Okay, so what's cool right now that you're working on in the design build arena?
Well, so for those of you, any foodies in the audience? Anybody like good food? We designed and built a fun little restaurant in Robbinsdale called Travail. That was a very exciting project. That was our first commercial project. We just completed it last year, and it's still fun to go and look at something like that. We did a project for United Health Group recently, creating an immersive experience. That was very different for us. So I would say the things that are challenging us right now that are really exciting would be exploring ways to bring the things we've learned in the residential world about scale, about texture, about light, about how humans interact with each other on a very close personal level, into other spaces where it's not expected, and how radically it changes the experience of those spaces. And we still are playing and having fun with all of our houses and our clients and our kitchens and our bathrooms and our cool spaces.
On going down the green angle, what's the number one recommendation you make to clients when they come to you and they want to build in a way that's healthy for our planet?
Yes, I didn't talk about green building much, did I? I apologize. It's such a core part of what we do. It's difficult sometimes to step back and see what are the things that we do most. It's a process of not doing more than you need to. So if someone wants more space or better space or a new house, and they say, I need 4,000 square feet, and we say, why? Well, I need this, 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 and this, and this, and this. And we say, great, you can do all of that in 2,800 square feet. And that's less space to condition, that's fewer materials, that's less to clean, it's less expensive, and you will be happier. And so I try to steer the conversation away from the basics, like it should be energy efficient. That's a no-brainer. It doesn't need to be any more of a conversation than that. It should not waste water. You don't need 16 shower heads in your shower. Go to the spa for that. Go to Kalahari Water Park in Wisconsin Dells for that. You don't need that every day. It should be healthy and safe. And our industry is terrible in this regard. The building materials industry is atrocious. The plastics, the carpet. Carpet is 6 times heavier when you uninstall it than when you install it. You cannot vacuum it clean. It's disgusting. It shouldn't be in your house. The EPA would like to get rid of it, but it's still there. So those types of materials that we just say, nope, we're not going to do it, those are out. And then the focus really should be on living. This is a place where you have children, where you get sick, where you're happy, where you're in love, where you're sad. It should be a place that is beautiful and comforting. You should look out the window and see something that makes you happy. You should have windows. Passive house is ridiculous. They don't want you to have windows. So it needs to be a thing of beauty. And nature is the most beautiful thing I can think of. We are nature, right? Don't ever forget that. We're part of nature. City is natural. But you need to bring nature in and not be obsessed with the technology side. So keep it simple, keep it manageable, and make it beautiful. That's green building.
Well said. So now the obvious question, why are we up here in knickers?
Because we like to do good things, Paul.
Mm-hmm. So tell us, you and I know each other from the Minneapolis City of Lakes Rotary Club.
Yeah.
And what happened back in 1991 that got this whole thing started?
Oh man, you should tell. You should the King Bavender and Payne Stewart and the. You should tell that side of it.
Okay, so the guy who made outfits like this popular again was Payne Stewart. He won our national championship, the U.S. Open, at Hazeltine here in Minneapolis in 1991. It was a dramatic playoff, and King Bavender, the guy who makes all these fancy clothes, I'm going to introduce you to him in just a few minutes. He gathered some people together to play golf for a charity. And Michael Anschel now is you are the chairperson.
It's all about the title.
For the Knicker Open golf tournament that is co-sponsored by our Rotary Club, the Minneapolis City of Lakes, and Good Leadership Enterprises. At this point in time, we have raised, since that first tournament, $875,000 for the Boys and Girls Club. And it's been an outstanding journey. And tell us, give us your, so I'm a golfer. You are not.
I am not.
So tell us,
I like to golf,
why
but I am not a golfer.
Why are you a part of this? What's fun about this event?
Oh, what is it? Is it Mark Twain? Golfing is a good walk spoiled or something that, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But you can have a few martinis along the way, and it makes it a lot of fun. So the Rotary, we do lots of things at the Rotary that are about investing in our community because a strong community supports business, and it's a good place to live. And I'm a big fan of kids. I think kids are very, very important, and making sure that we provide the greatest amount of opportunity for those kids, especially kids who are at risk, whose family lives are not as wonderful as all of us in this room. And the Boys and Girls Club is one of those organizations that does such a great job of getting into the community and keeping kids from heading down a path that is really, really not great. That's a good way to say it, right? And so I got involved with the Knicker Open because it was part of Rotary, because the message of supporting the Boys and Girls Club was strong. It was also a great way to meet some of the other Rotarians who, there's just some phenomenal people. There's a bunch of you in the audience today. Not that the rest of you aren't phenomenal. And finally, to be involved with helping to grow that event and make it more impactful and more meaningful. It's raised an incredible amount of money over these 23 years. And I think we've talked about our goals for the next 2 years are to really grow it along with the Good Leadership Breakfast and to make it more impactful for the Boys and Girls Club.
Yep, so next year will be the 25th anniversary of Payne Stewart's win. King Bavender and I have been talking about getting in contact with Payne Stewart's family because we intend to get that number over $1 million next year as raised through the Knicker Open, and we're going to ask you to help in just a second. But before we do that, I just wanted to say thank you to Michael. Please share your appreciation. We're going to give a check for $500 to your favorite charity for being our speaker today. Where are we going to send this?
This is going to go to the Green Home Institute, which is the home of the Green Star Standard, which is the residential remodeling and new construction standard that we helped to develop for Minnesota that now serves the 7-state area, and it's super awesome. So if you ever build or remodel, you should make sure that it's Green Star certified.
Fantastic. Please say thank you to Michael.